Morning, everybody. Welcome to the Dragonwell green tea session. Dragonwell is a green tea from Zhejiang Province. Think of Zhejiang Province. Originally, Zhejiang Province contained the city of Shanghai. So envision Shanghai as you understand it on the Chinese map, and you're in Zhejiang Province. Green tea really comes from Hangzhou. Hangzhou is about an hour or a little bit more train ride from Shanghai, going west. And so today we're going to do some different things. First off, I'm going to reflect from a gratitude standpoint. Second off, we'll talk about Dragonwell and green tea in general. Third off, we'll talk about tea rankings in China because this is kind of an important subject. So, and we're going to start off with shop business for this past week. And I really want to focus on two things. So let's focus first on gratitude because we're extremely grateful to all of you 1%ers or 99%ers, depending on how you look at it, for all the years of support, really the participation in these sessions. It's truly been sensational, and we've learned a lot. How is this linked to Shock News? It is linked. We had an extraordinary week, and it all happened on Wednesday and Thursday when five people who live in the Pacific Northwest, they don't know each other except casually, all contacted us independently. So there were two of those stories, but the theme was repeated throughout. Two of the stories which were the most interesting. So there's this gentleman in Oregon who's been with us since about the start and really is a big Cliff tea and red tea drinker and really enjoys our teas. And at a certain point, his wife said, okay, you're spending a lot on tea. And this was probably in 2019 or 2020. And so he started actually, he didn't tell me. I knew that there was something going on. He didn't tell me what he was going to do. And actually, nobody usually does because either they're a little sheepish or a little embarrassed. And so he's going and visiting other tea shops, and he regularly makes the trip to Seattle. So he's visiting Seattle, Portland, buying tea this, buying tea that. We had a great conversation on Wednesday because he said, I'm stuck. And I'm really stuck because I bought all these teas, I've tried them, they just aren't long lasting in terms of the steeps. They don't give the same flavor. He likes to do small cup and large cup. He says the small cup experience just isn't what your teas are. And so we went through this long conversation. Then he put in $1,000 order for tea from here, and we're so grateful that all of you are really grokking this. And we know, and again, we heard this theme with in variation with all the Pacific Northwest customers, including one who we've known for a number of years. And his request, it was on the same day, was Wednesday. I had just gotten off the phone with the Oregon gentleman, and in comes to my email another request from Oregon, and it said the following thing. He said, I'm going to be pouring tea for a bunch of people, and they have a class. I'm hosting this class, and I'm also going to pour them tea. So what I want for the class is your choice of a Cliff tea that is nothing under $125 an ounce. I want something really of this higher caliber. So I called him up. I said, gosh, what sort of session? And it was a session on Buddhism and Taoism. It was very cool. And this is a guy that we liked, that we had lots of tea interactions with over the years. He's written a book about Alan Watts. And So he ended up getting a very nice cliff tea. And then while I was on the phone, and he said, by the way, I don't have to be over 125 for 2 more ounces of something different. In fact, a little less than that would be good. So ended up with a nice tea order. And again, it's the same sense because he used to live at a tea shop. And this tea shop is curated by a former a buyer of the Tao of Tea, a sensational experienced guy, but nonetheless isn't getting the teas that we're getting. So this is, again, the extraordinary interaction that you and I, or Biju and myself and all of you have this interaction. And we're so pleased that you're able to appreciate and access these teas. So that's one thought, expressing our gratitude for your long support over the years. It's been fun. It continues to be fun. Second announcement, an announcement that people have been waiting for a long time, which is, okay, are you or are you not going to do this trip next year? And the answer is, we are going to do the trip. I'm hearing the applause. Thank you. The second part of that question, I still can't answer. And this is the unfortunate problem of this big old long holiday, which just concluded in China. And nobody's really interested in talking about practical details. So I don't have a price yet. But we're working on it, and we think by next Saturday we'll have a price for you. We'll be able to tell you what the price is. And also, once we have the price, we'll have the dates. So we should have both things together next Saturday, knowing in general that these trips occur sometime near the end of March, beginning of April. This one we're estimating to be 9 or 10 days long. So that piece of information is very important for those of you who are thinking of participating in the trip. All right. So let's turn our attention to Dragonwell. Dragonwell, as you know, is one of the most famous teas in China. Not just green tea, tea in general. How does a tea become so famous? Is it really because the flavor is so many grades above the flavor of other teas? Let's examine this for a moment, because remembering, and let's just, randomly have a tea come to my mind, a green tea come to mind, Char. Is it better than Char? Char is very delicious. And some of you would argue convincingly, and I wouldn't dispute, that Chara has every bit as much gravitas as Dragonwell, flavor, beauty. So how come Dragonwell made the top 10 list? Actually, right at the top of that top 10 list in the 1950s and in the 1960s, and then repeated in the 1970s. How come it made it up there? Well, let's think about tea history for a minute. So when you're thinking of tea history, part of that history goes back to pre-Tang Dynasty. But let's focus on the Tang Dynasty, because Tang Dynasty around 618 to 960, give or take a few years, remembering that by that time, there were already imperial tea gardens. There was already tribute tea going to the emperor. And so everybody's tasting their teas and thinking, oh, is this good enough for the emperor? Let's go ahead and send it. And so we had many, many teas that the emperor from that time all the way through the Qing dynasty. They were receiving teas and evaluating teas. Did the emperors make a list of teas that everybody said, okay, these are the top 10 teas? No, they did not. However, they did year by year talk about the teas that they liked. And Dragonwell over time became one of those very prominent teas. Okay, fast forward to the 20th century. So let's think about China in 1949, 1950. China at that time recovering from two things. First off, a horrible world war where the Japanese had invaded, decimated some areas of China quite severely, and left China in a difficult spot economically, left China in a difficult spot in terms of production, although pockets of China were still producing tea. And Hangzhou still produced some degree of tea, not a huge whole amount, but you had tea coming out of Yunnan. When you got north of Hangzhou, you were getting less and less tea because the Japanese occupied more of a space there. They disturbed the transport lines more severely there than in some other places. So that's one thing. China was recovering from that. What was the other thing China was dealing with? They had a civil war. And that civil war ended in 1949. And the communists came to power. But what did they inherit? They inherited this country that had just come out of World War II, out of the Civil War. So they had to restore lots of basic services. And they had to restore basic order. They did so in good order. However, what was their economic status? Hard. Any way you looked at it, hard. Most of the country was rural. Very little was manufacturing. And what manufacturing there had was damaged, particularly in the Northeast, for several reasons. Part of it for World War II, part of it post-World War II. And remained in a rebuilding mode for some number of years. The food supply was impacted. And so variety of food throughout China was limited. So historically, you had all these things going on. And at the same time, China had all these departments, as it does now, cultural department, propaganda department, departments related to arts and cultural intangibles, and as well as production, manufacturing. You have all the normal things that the government has. So the cultural departments trying to encourage the tea industry, trying to also get consumers involved, and in some way reaching a hand to the West, reaching a hand outside, whether it was the West or other parts of Asia or Africa. It didn't matter. Reaching a hand outside and saying, here are some of the great products we have. Okay, so they made this list of top 10 teas. So think about it. If you are coming out of a difficult situation and you're trying to build something and you want to talk about the top 10 of anything in your country, where are you going to look? You're going to look historically. Okay, that's one thing. You're also going to look at, hey, what are the leaders drinking? Hey, that's very important. Because if the leaders are drinking something, remember, the leaders are drinking at the top of the food chain, right? So Mao, Dragonwell. Other leaders drank Dragonwell, but Dragonwell's a top 10 tea. Now, let's not get confused here. I'm not saying that the leaders enforce this as a top 10 tea. What I am saying is, as the departments that put together these lists looked around, oh, what teas are being drunk by the leaders? And that's kind of a good place to start, because remember, what did the Chinese leaders inherit? They inherited the imperial system, really, when you think about it. 1911, it's broken. 1949, you have this interregnum between 1911 and 1949. And China's just having a hard time in so many different ways. And so 1949 comes, 1953, 1955, and 1955, they start to think top 10. And now, what do they have to look like? Well, when I was a youth, my dad or granddad always drank Dragonwell or Premier's Choice or some of these other very famous teas. And so that's how the first lists were put together. It isn't that they comprehensively went through every farm in China. They didn't go down to Chara Farm and say, hey, let's have your tea. We're going to have a contest of tea. That's not how this was built. So you did, and the other part of this is some stories, let's see, I want to say legends, apocryphal stories, and some truths, but mostly legends and apocryphal stories. Because, if you had a tea that a prospect for a test at the Capitol, he's very sick, monks nursing back to health with this tea, and then he gives it to the emperor, who makes his wife well, who was very sick with this tea. Oh, this is a great tea. And it has this apocryphal story leads you to believe, okay. And it's a selling device, it's a cultural device, all in one. Did something like that happen? Some version may have happened, but not at that apocryphal level. So you have these things culturally swimming around in your head as you're in group think in 1955 trying to figure out, all right, we want to publish this list. And so this is how the top 10 became the top 10. And the result is Dragonwell has had a long history. It's had a specifically long history with the emperor because Qianlu, one of the emperors in the 18th century, went to the Dragonwell area incognito. And then here comes the legend part of it. He drank tea at a peasant's house, and he liked it so much, he put some in the pocket, goes back to the court. And by the way, again, incognito, goes back to the court, and his mother is sick. Oh gosh, this theme of mother being sick or wife being sick is kind of a real thing. And he reaches his hand in his pocket. Oh, I have leaves. Maybe these will help. Boink, she becomes cured. And Dragonwell gets an official garden, tea garden, the Qianlong Tea Garden, 18 bushels. Wow. Okay. So these stories have swirled around Dragonwell for a long time. I just picked one. There's many, many stories about well water in the area where Dragonwell is growing. And this well water intensifies the flavor of the tea. I mean, you have story after story rolling out. Yes.
You mentioned that there are 18 bushes. So the question from Peter is, are ancient trees ever used in green tea production, or even trees of any age, or is green tea mostly derived from tea bushes?
Oh my God. I love Peter because what happens, I'm not sure what sort of magic tea he's drinking before these sessions, but somehow this tea reveals to him, oh, John's going to talk about green tea and old bushes. Let me ask the question, and I'll be prescient. And he was prescient yet again. I did have this on my list of topics, and there's a reason. Because we've actually gotten tea from bushes that are estimated to be 300 to 400 years old. So Peter used the word ancient, not ancient, old. So up to 1,000 years or 800 years, every place is a little different. It's old. After 800 or 900 or 1,000, it's ancient. So we've had old bush, and this is really an interesting story. By the way, I'm gonna get back. This is a digression, so I haven't forgotten the main story here. But this was right on the path of where I was going, so this is perfect. Um, the bushes grow in certain parts of the mountains. There's 4 or 5 mountains there, and in a couple of mountains, they have these older bushes. So who gets these bushes? They're allotted and they're hugely valuable to peasants who have laid some sort of claim either historically or in the modern age. They're close and they can take care of the bushes. And we at one time in the shop had old bush dragonwell. That lasted for a very short time because somebody from the East Coast detected, they came through here and detected we had this stuff. And this stuff was not inexpensive. This stuff was about $250 an ounce. And once they realized we had it here, they bought us out because these were Chinese. They knew the stories associated with these old bush trees. So one of you is about to ask another question. So I hope answer this question before you answer it. And this question is, we know you have all these secret, stashes in the tea vault. Do you still have old bush dragonwell in the tea vault? And would you be willing to share? So let me help answer this one right away. No, we have none. Back in those years when we sold this, we weren't, we always had the thought, well, we'll be getting new and interesting things. And we always do still get new and interesting things. In recent years, among the really special things, we have held back a little bit of stuff, especially for locals or special events or occasions, because at a certain point, it's just like when we had fervor on the board. Yes, we occasionally put that stuff on the board, but usually not put on the board. Usually, we have a special event and share it. So, no, we don't have any more of that. This was pre us doing that. And so, in response to your question, green tea in general, they don't have ancient bushes, especially we're not in Yunnan province. And so this idea of allowing bushes to grow untended for a long, long time doesn't exist. Typically, and so the natural follow-up to that is why doesn't it exist? Well, there's several reasons. One is the yields of ancient stuff, ancient bushes. Did I say ancient? I did. Old bushes is much less than the yield of bushes that are under 25 years old. So typically, by custom in this area, and by custom in some other areas, green tea areas as well, they take the bushes every 20 years or so, sometimes it's every 18 or 19 years or so, and they rotate. They dig out, and they're among these non-contiguous fields. Oh, this non-contiguous field has these, 17, 16, 17-year-old. We're not going to harvest from them. Point. We're going to take them out. We're going to put in new bushes, and they'll start yielding stuff in 2 to 3 years. And then they'll yield a lot. And so this is the cycle that goes on typically within the green tea world. The other thing, and it's false, by the way, so let's lead right away with that it's false, but it's commonly held in people's heads that green tea, after X amount of time, because it's unoxidated, just goes bad. And it just loses its punch and loses its flavor. So let me give you another story, which is a little different. It does change. That greenness punch changes. And actually, there's a period of green tea, and it's unpredictable by the green tea, that after a certain amount of time, it does become, ooh, this is not so good. But if you're patient and you have storage space, it then transforms into something wonderful. So most people don't have the patience. And certainly in China, they don't have this as a common practice. However, there are a few growers we've talked to who actually do this, and it's usually unintentional. Oh, this group here didn't get rotated properly, and this group is a little old. Let's taste it. Hey, that's not so bad. We'll age it a little more. Oh, that's really good. So this is something that most people in the West don't know. Even in China, there's kind of a prejudice against older green tea. And that's, again, lack of patience and lack of storage space. All right, so that was a very long digression. Peter, a great look into my mind. And so let's go back to this original thought of these tea lists, making it to the tea list, being famous, being drunk by leaders, and then being used as tea gifts to peoples around the world. So in the 50s and 60s, Dragonwell, the Junshan needle, or a few of the other teas, Chima needle, were used as gifts because, hey, this is some of our best stuff. So I ask you this. Did people outside of Zhejiang Province, and let me give you dates, from 1949 to 1976, were they drinking much Dragonwell? And the answer is no. First off, the yield wasn't that high. Lots of things going on in China which affected that yield. That's the first thing. The second thing, the really good stuff was sent to Beijing and used as gifts. And leaders had their own plots, so to speak, in the most famous place where China grows Dragonwell. And those plots were harvested for them and processed, and then they could use that as gifts when they were meeting foreign dignitaries, or they could drink it themselves. So you had all of this happening with Dragonwell that, for example, you didn't have with Chara. Chara was being grown, there's no question, but it wasn't being tasted widely, and it didn't have wide circulation. So everything in terms of circulation improved in the 1980s because China's infrastructure, China's productivity, everything improved. Further, this implies something. So let's go to where this implies. If I tell you today that the majority of Dragonwell, I mean 99.9% of it, is spring pick only, you'd nod your head and, wow, that's nice fat. And then you would extrapolate from that and say, wow, this has always been that spring pick tea. The answer is no. Pre-1980, some of the farmers used to pick summer and fall. What changed that rhythm? Why was that going on? It was going on because the price of tea was different in that era than it is post-1980. Price of tea post-1980. I mean, if you think this is expensive now, think about going from pennies to dollars for whatever you need. That jump all by itself, which is essentially what happened starting in the late 1980s, that all of a sudden made a huge difference in peasants' lives. And as that trend, especially if you were on that top 10 tea list, Oh my God, everybody in China, this thing was published in Renminbi in the Chinese Peking Daily, in the Chinese newspaper, national newspaper, China Daily, published and said, hey, these are top 10 teas. Everybody reads that, so, ooh, this is what I got. Okay, everybody knew it. And so the demand for that increased year by year. Affordability in terms of earning power by the Chinese population increases. I want that stuff. At the same time, what happened to the production? Fell. Why did it fall? What historically led that to fall? Well, remember, Chinese, very smart farmers noticing the prices going up 10 times, 20 times, thinking, you know what? I have to work really, really hard. And all of a sudden, the price is 20 times what it used to be. My buying power is increasing greatly. And as such, I'm wondering to myself, why am I working during the summer and the fall and shortening the lifespan of the plants? Why am I doing that when in fact the value I'm getting, the actual dollars and cents that I'm getting are increasing so fast that I can rebuild my house? Ooh, and they continue to increase. Now I can have small mansions. And I can have all the accoutrements that go with small mansions. 90-inch televisions, nice carvings, 4-story houses. I mean, that's good stuff, right? And I'm not working during the summer. I'm pruning to make sure that the bushes continue to be productive and grow. And during the fall, and I'm doing watering too. I'm doing that. I don't want anything to disappear. But I'm not harvesting. Hence, this huge economic shift in China meant that we had this golden era of very wonderful Dragonwell tea. And we're living in this era. Remember, Dragonwell tea became an object of two types of people. You had the LCSers. To do an edit of that. We had the LCSers. And the LCSers, those are the ones outside of Hangzhou who grew who grew tea bushes, processed it, and called it Dragonwell, even though it wasn't Dragonwell. The penalty for being caught was not, it was disproportionate to the amount of money you could make. In other words, you could make so much money that, oh, if you get caught, yeah, it's a slap on the wrist. But I'm rich. So that's one thing that arose. The second thing with Dragonwell that arose is it became the tea of choice as a corruption tea. What do I mean by a corruption tea? And I've got to be real careful and specific with this. When you needed something done and you weren't getting it through regular channels, you gave gifts. Well, Dragonwell became so expensive at one point, $50,000 or more a pound. You give a gift, person receives the gift, they realize, oh, you just handed me 50,000, but it's not in currency. I understand what the objective is here. All right. So we've gone in an interesting direction with Dragonwell. And I wanted on purpose to go in this direction because this links in with history, it links in with culture, and we've touched one of the reasons that Dragonwell is so prominent. Let's go explore the tea ourselves and see if we like it. We're going to take a 10-second break here. You know, as an understudy, I am so lucky because normally understudies don't get given such important assignments. But I was happily given this very important assignment to introduce the numinous tea master Biju so that she can demonstrate how to brew it with you and then actually brew it with you. So Biju?
Yes. Good morning. 早上好。My name 我是碧珠。Yes. So yeah. So John talking about the longjing, the Dragonwell. So we call longjing in China. This big tea tree, big fish. Yeah. This I really like it. The John the about the agricultural university in Anhui, our province in China.
John, needed to restart. I apologize.
Oh, sorry.
We lost the connection.
It says uh, now it's off,
Let me try again. Apologies. Yes. Meeting's on.
still off, but it's going to be on. It looks like.
Mm,
Do you have to redo something on the computer?
The reset that.
Oh, this works. Right.
So yes, hi folks, yes, we understand the video is lost. Yes, Dragonwell madness. Apologies.
Not a problem.
Oh, actually,
Yes,
yes.
there we go.
很好。
There we go.
Yeah.
Great.
Hey, good morning. 早上好。We do Dragonwell. Okay. So that's from the Zhejiang Province in China. So yeah, I'm exciting. So 10 cup tea in China. This include that's green tea. Okay. This is in Zhejiang. So they don't use the small size. Same size. It's a bay. It's a cup. Oh, okay. So this I do. So usually I use 3. Okay. 这样差不多。
So the usual setup, 3 cups, you can do 2, that's okay. And we do it to speed up the cooling down, dissipating the steam process, and a strainer. This is really all you need. We brew uncovered because when you cover, you flatten the flavor.
So we have a new friend, right?
I think so,
Yeah.
yes.
This is called demonstrate. So yeah, first. Okay. So in Dragonwell in Longjing area so in 梅家屋、狮峰、钱塘、龙井 same. Okay.
So
This
to be precise, and she's heating the cup and is making sure that they're completely clean, and you can use any temperature between 170 and 212. And to be precise, the Chinese do use cups in Zhejiang for Dragonwell. They're usually not 16 ounce, they're more like 12-ounce cups. And they're usually thinner, not thinner, narrower. They're not as wide at the top. Yes.
Peter asked, can you talk about the pressed look of the leaves as compared to a rolled look?
Yes. And so Peter asked a production question. And this is a very important question in general, because when you are going to shape a leaf, whether you're going to make it a stripe or curled or rounded, there is usually a separate concrete step to do that. Dragonwell is unique because, well, it's not unique. You have other green teas that also do it at the same time that they denatured the oxidation enzyme. So in other words, when they're frying it, they actually have very specific hand motions where they flatten the tea leaf. Great question, great insight. Now, when you do that at home, make sure that you make allowances for not having the great coordination that the tea master has. You saw she went probably 24 inches above that cup. you could end up with water all over the place. Trust me, I've done that. Dissipating the steam. All right. The master is getting her tools out, one so that she doesn't have to handle leaves directly. One
Tea leaves.
is where she starts out with the tea leaves.
Yeah.
Into the heated glass.
Cover.
Cover and shake. Set the timer for 2 minutes. She's pouring from the kettle because she can control the pour because it's got a spout, and trying to pour on the side. Trying not to pour directly on the leaves, in other words.
Rob notes that the Dragonwell leaves look like a short version of Wong's creation. Is there a relationship between them?
No. So Rob asked a great question. He said the Dragonwell leaves somehow remind him or have a similar look to Wong's creation, except much smaller. They're two very specific different varietals. And Wong's creation was one of the early hybrids done in the late 1800s by a farmer who noticed that in the forest there was a tea plant that was producing incredibly large leaves. So no, there is no, and the whole process of doing Wong's creation is a little bit different than the process of doing Dragon. Yes.
Peter observes the leaves are a brownish green, and compared to other green teas that have really green leaves, what gives way to this color?
This is, oh my gosh, you know, it truly is like you're in my mind. I can't believe it. You're knocking down all the subjects I was going to talk about. So the Dragonwell from various mountains has different looks. Not only that, whether it's machine processed or hand processed also creates a different look. So ours tends to have a little bit of yellowish, and the stuff that's very, very green is usually machine processed. So that's one difference. The other difference is some of the varietals, there's 3 or 4 varietals of Dragonwell, and 3 of them are relatively newly developed over the last 40 or 50 years. Some of them have a little bit of a color difference.
你告诉机器炒的是均匀，都是
Yeah.
绿的。
Oh, that's
手工炒的不是均匀，这不是机器。
Yeah,
手
no,
工的。
that's exactly okay. So let me repeat part of what I just said, because Bijou said the same thing, and that is when it's machine done, you can tell because everything is so uniform and it's so green.
Yeah.
When it's
It's
beautiful. When it is handmade, you have these craft variations. It's not even. So if you look at this beautiful color, there is color. There's lots of color, and it's greenish and a hint of yellow in here. So let's enter the quality arena. I'm going to do that. This is done at 175 degrees, so I can take that type of a sip. Remember, I'm looking for astringency first, stringency, mouthfeel, aftertaste, and then energetics. Energetics, again, being defined specifically. How do you feel? How does it make you feel? And the energetics can be either a very physical manifestation or it can be a mood manifestation. All of those things are fair game for energetics. I enter. Okay, I'm getting this stringency. And by the way, I know you're taking, when you do this, you'll be taking notes because last week was Towering Pine, this week is Dragonwell, next week is Satisfaction, and they're all different. And by taking the notes, this will help you really hone your own skills to catch these subtleties. So I have a sense of this tea already. And this next time, this next sip, I'm going to confirm. And then additionally, think also about aroma and flavor. It's your turn to brew. Remember to set your timers for 2 minutes. And you draw your water. The opening round of water can be any temperature from 170 to 212, because remember, you're using that to make sure that the glasses are absolutely clean, no residue. Watch the tea masters tea rhythm. Everybody develops their own tea rhythm. It's part of the fun of this. What does tea rhythm imply? It implies being present. If you're off thinking about something else, or if you have distractions in the background, you can't be present. You can't be present. And when you're doing tea at the highest levels, which all of you are, then presence is absolutely demanded. All right, Tea Master is drawing 175-degree water. Ours is pre-set. And not in a hurry. You know, it's a nice rhythm. I just love the step-by-step process here. This is how you end up getting the most out of your tea. Yeah. Not in a hurry, just steady, all the details, all the steps in good order. Tea leaves in the heated glass. Smell, get the first part of this going in terms of understanding what you have. So this is the high pour style.
Yeah.
There's several different types of styles. Don't worry if you can't do this or you don't want to do this because you're trying to
Yeah.
and the thought behind this is to increase the brightness of the tea. But don't worry about these. These are small details. If you can do them, that's great. If you can't do them, that's also great, not an issue, because remember, this tea is about accumulated details, and those that you can do, that's just fine. Those you don't want to, zero problem.
And to increase the brightness of the tea by further aerating the water.
Yes, yes, that's exactly right. Thank you.
There's some comments, folks. Let me back up.
Okay.
Jeremy observes that pressed green leaves in the bag had scents reminding me of walking in the snowy mountain forest of childhood, but with a wisp of honey. A very light golden liquor with a hint of green brought a scent of wet oats to mind. With a swallow, a new flavor emerged. It's a changeling for me, new sensations. There's an abundance that is surprising.
This is great. So Jeremy leads off. She concludes that there's an abundance in this tea that's surprising. So the dry leaves have a hint of honey sweetness. The wet leaves, I love, and let's pay attention to this description of the wet leaves, because this is a really good description. And you'll know why later in the discussion when I tell you what the Chinese say about this tea. So Jeremy says wet oats. And I wished I had thought of that myself. It's that good. It's a great description of the aroma, and it actually leads you into the actual tasting of it. Great comment, Jeremy. Timer has gone off. Tea Master is going to separate the tea from the tea water. The tea leaves from the tea water.
Kathy observes the warm, dry leaves smell very fresh.
Ah, great catch, Kathy. So one of the things about great tea is that feeling of freshness. And so Kathy talks about that right away. The warm, wet leaves give her that sense of freshness.
Yeah, actually the warm, dry leaves.
I'm sorry, the warm, dry leaves give her that sense of freshness. So do the warm, wet leaves.
Jennifer observes, I love the nutty smell of the dry warm leaves.
Okay, Jennifer loves the nutty smell of the warm dry leaves. Now, let me hook up that comment with Jeremy's oats. Those things kind of have a relationship, because when you think of oats, I'm not talking about dried oats, wet oats, they have a little bit of that nuttiness.
Peter shares, even before I had finished my first sip, I thought, wow, the aliveness in this. This combines with a strong, consistent astringency that just doesn't exist in a market tea or even a pretty good tea. A nice honey sweetness that balances it out. This is crisp and clean. Could I say there are some soil elements detected that add to the aliveness?
I love this comment. Peter talks about crisp aliveness. Let's focus on that aliveness. What that aliveness suggests is a link to the terroir. And Peter makes that link by talking about soil elements. Obviously, not obviously, the soil elements do play a part in why this Dragonwell tastes like this. Every Dragonwell by mountain tastes somewhat different. Even the same varietal by mountain tastes different. So that means the soil terroir. And this is why those LCSers in other provinces, they get nailed real quickly, because you have the real stuff and then you have the LCS stuff. And there's a chasm in terms of aliveness and flavor. The other part of Peter's comment that I want to talk about It was the second part of what he
Crisp,
said.
clean, and then he led with there was a consistent and stringency.
Astringency. The consistent astringency. In other words, Peter has linked up this aliveness, crispness, and that real big astringency. Yeah.
And Rob shares. I get a round umami sense in my nose from the warm leaves. The steeped leaves smell vegetal. The tea water has a round, fruity, but also corn scent. The tea water reminded Sue of sour cherry.
So we've got a lot going on in this comment. Let's start at the end. The end, there's a hint of some sort of fruit, some sort of sweetness. We've heard honey, we've heard sweetness in various other comments, either about the wet leaves or about the tea water. So we're getting that as a consistent theme. Rob also talked about in the opening smell, there's hints of umami. And then
The steep leaves smelled vegetal.
the steep leaves smell vegetal. So let's link the vegetal back to the oats of Jeremy and also link that vegetal a little bit to Jennifer's comment of a little bit of nuttiness. So you have a continuum here. I'm not suggesting vegetal is a synonym for nuttiness or oatiness. What I am suggesting is that there's kind of a continuum of comments where you can kind of see where people go. It's drawing a complete picture for you. Aliveness, strong astringency, crispness, and a representative of its physical terroir. So this tea, some teas, some green teas leave you, especially in the beginning, with more questions than answers. Not this one. This one, and again, I'll use Peter's word, there's an aliveness to it. It kind of takes you by the hand and says, hey, folks, we're going on a journey. After all, I'm the #1 tea in China. We got to go for a journey, a big old long journey. Okay, love the commentary. We've almost come to the end of this session.
More comment. Jeremy observes the stringency is cozy, very mild, and it's constrained in front of my mouth. The energetics are pervasive and enlivening. On astringency, Rob adds, it's a light, wet astringency that's smooth.
Love these comments. So we have enlivening as an energetic. We have astringency that's cozy as part of that mouthfeel for Jeremy. And then an astringency, what did Rob say?
Yeah, a light, wet astringency.
Light, wet, okay.
Smooth.
Light, wet astringency, but smooth. And so, pre-doing these tea sessions, usually probably when you dealt with people and talked about flavors and so forth, astringency probably didn't usually come up as something desirable. Here, it's desirable. The astringency in this tea is desirable. It's comfortable. It's smooth. It leads you in to this tea. And this is an important difference because I know over 20 years ago when I first started, I'm trying to figure out what's the right language for this. And as soon as I felt comfortable using astringency and smooth together in the same sentence, that kind of was my entree into the tea world. Yeah, you can have both, and both are great attributes. Yes.
Kathy says, there seem to be a lot of trichomes. Would they add to the vibrancy?
Great comment. So Kathy says, look, we're all scientists here. When I use my chief scientific tool, my vision, I see all these trichomes in this cup. Is that the cause of brightness? And absolutely, it's linked to that brightness. Because remember, trichomes are all about polyphenols. And the more polyphenols you have, the more alive a beverage will feel. Great catch, Kathy. Yes.
Peter says, I'm finding the energy of this tea channels more towards a mental focus rather than energy to use the body.
This is great. Peter, and all of you are going to be different. And I actually am different. Peter's transfer of energy is to the mind. All of a sudden, by the way, cover your thoughts now because he can read all your minds right now. That's how much energy he's getting. I wish I could get that energy out of it. I might have to talk to you later and figure out how to get that mind energy. My energy actually kind of goes throughout my body. And again, contrary to how I normally think about green tea, this morning, this thing is warming me. It's giving me the thought, maybe I should go outside and run a marathon. Well, maybe not. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. Oh my God. This is why I'm grateful every Saturday morning because you all teach me so many things. And it's wonderful that we have this tool to use to share about how we're feeling, to share about how we're perceiving things. I salute all of you again for your perception, for your care as you go through this. We've had Dragonwell for ages, but we haven't done it as a tea, as a discussion tea in a long, long, long time. So very exciting to do that this morning. I'm very satisfied with this experience. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe I'll be even more satisfied next week when we have satisfaction. So, what are your responsibilities this week? Let's see, should I give you new responsibilities? No, let's stick with the old ones. Stay healthy, be happy, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye now.